Cemeteries, places where silence reigns, yet echoes of the past linger in the air. For some, they are sanctuaries of peace. For others, realms of darkness and the unknown. In this series, we will explore mysterious events that have taken place in cemeteries. Brace yourself for a journey filled with spine-chilling stories from all around the world. Our first stop is in Scotland, at the haunted Greyfriars Kirkyard Cemetery, where the restless spirit of Bluidy MacKenzie is said to dwell. If you're ready, let's begin. In the heart of Edinburgh lies Greyfriars Kirkyard Cemetery, a place steeped in history and surrounded by an eerie atmosphere. Even during the day, the cold shadows of the ancient tombstones are enough to unsettle you. But at night, it feels like an entirely different realm, where silence itself becomes menacing. This cemetery is not just a resting place for the past, it's a place where entities may still roam, disturbing the living. At the center of this story is Bluidy MacKenzie's mausoleum. George Mackenzie, one of the most brutal figures in Scottish history, earned his infamous nickname during the 17th century. He ordered the imprisonment, torture, and execution of hundreds of Presbyterians during a period of religious unrest. Ironically, after his death, he was buried in Greyfriars, right next to the graves of his victims. Over time, the cemetery became a hotspot for paranormal enthusiasts. But beware, not everyone who sets foot there walks away unscathed. Those who dare to enter have reported strange occurrences, from mysterious scratches to sudden burns on their bodies. And one night, a group of adventurous thrill-seekers decided to confront the secrets of Greyfriars Kirkyard. The group arrived near midnight, with a cold chill sinking into their bones. Wisps of fog curled through the air as faint moonlight illuminated the ancient tombstones, casting eerie shadows. Each footstep echoed through the silent grounds, amplifying the tension in the air. Their destination was Bluidy MacKenzie's mausoleum. As they approached, an unsettling gust of wind whipped through the area, despite the otherwise calm weather. It was as though the mausoleum itself was warning them to stay away. Standing before the rusted iron gates of Mackenzie's mausoleum, one of the friends smirked and whispered, ready for some ghost hunting. They were trying to mask their nerves with humor, but something about the place felt palpably wrong. Suddenly, a faint scratching sound echoed from beyond the iron gate. At first, they assumed it was just the wind scraping against the old stones, but the sound grew sharper and more deliberate, as though someone or something inside was clawing at the walls. A brave or foolish friend grabbed the gate and gave it a shake. That was their biggest mistake. A deep, guttural rumble resonated from within the mausoleum, like a growl rising from the depths of the earth. A fierce wind spiraled around them, circling the mausoleum like a furious vortex. Then they saw it. A black mist began to rise from the top of the mausoleum, twisting and morphing until it formed the shape of a dark, human-like figure. The silhouette hovered above the mausoleum, shifting and pulsing like living shadow, before slowly advancing toward the group. Frozen in fear, they watched as the figure drew closer. It was human-like, yet utterly inhuman, composed entirely of darkness. The air grew thick and suffocating. One friend screamed and bolted, but I stood paralyzed. My chest tightened, as though an invisible hand was pressing down on me. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I gasped for breath. The figure loomed over me, and I heard a voice deep and guttural, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You have awakened me." Cold terror gripped my soul. It wasn't just physical. It felt as though this entity had reached into the core of my being. My friends yanked me by the arm, snapping me out of my paralysis. We sprinted away from the mausoleum, the howling wind and ominous growls following close behind. The eerie footsteps echoed until we finally crossed the threshold of the cemetery. The moment we stepped outside, everything went silent. The sudden absence of sound was almost as terrifying as the chaos we had fled from. We stood there, panting and trembling, unable to speak. None of us were ever the same after that night. Strange marks, bruises, and scratches appeared on our bodies without explanation. One friend claimed he couldn't sleep for weeks, haunted by whispers that echoed in his ears. But the worst was what followed me. Late at night, whenever I looked into a mirror, I would sometimes see a shadowy figure behind me. It was always faint but unmistakable. And one night, I heard that voice again. "You have awakened me." Greyfriars Kirkyard still stands in Edinburgh, and Bluidy MacKenzie's mausoleum remains a grim reminder of the past. If you ever find yourself there, think twice before stepping into that cursed place. Some spirits never rest, and if you disturb them, they may find you. Located on the southwest side of Chicago, Resurrection Cemetery is one of the most famous and terrifying cemeteries in America. Even during the day, its eerie silence can send chills down your spine. But at night, it feels as if you've stepped into a different dimension. What makes this cemetery truly infamous is a long-standing paranormal legend, the ghost of Resurrection Mary. This tale, which has been passed down for decades, tells the story of a tragic accident and a restless spirit trapped on the same road for eternity. And now, we'll recount the chilling details as experienced by witnesses. The story goes that in the 1930s, a young woman named Mary attended a dance at a ballroom on Archer Avenue. Late in the night, she had a heated argument with her date and stormed out of the ballroom in anger. As she walked along the moonlit road, tragedy struck. A speeding car came out of nowhere and hit Mary, killing her instantly. Her grieving family buried her at Resurrection Cemetery, thinking this would be her final resting place. But the tale of Mary was far from over. It was just beginning. The first reported paranormal encounter occurred in the 1940s. A driver passing along Archer Avenue late at night saw a young woman in a white dress hitchhiking on the side of the road. She looked distressed but strikingly beautiful. The driver pulled over and offered to help. The woman silently got into the car and gave directions to a location near the cemetery. She barely spoke, staring blankly out the window throughout the ride. As they approached the cemetery, she suddenly said, "You can stop here." The driver stopped, intending to bid her farewell. But as she stepped out of the car, she vanished into thin air. This incident seemed like an urban legend at first, but over the years, similar encounters kept happening. The ghostly figure of a young woman in white became a paranormal hallmark of Archer Avenue. Some drivers reported their cars suddenly stalling, followed by the mysterious appearance of the woman, who would then disappear without a trace. Others claimed they saw her from a distance, but when they looked again, she was gone. Perhaps the most terrifying incident happened in 1976, when a security guard at Resurrection Cemetery witnessed something truly bizarre. While patrolling the grounds at night, he noticed strange marks on the iron gates. As he got closer, he saw that the bars had been bent, as if gripped by an incredibly strong hand. Even more disturbing were the bird-like impressions that resembled human fingers, despite a thorough investigation. No one could explain how the iron bars had been warped, and it was confirmed that no one had entered the cemetery that night. For years, sightings of the white-clad woman continued on Archer Avenue. People say that Mary's restless spirit remains trapped, searching for a way back to the cemetery. Paranormal researchers have attempted to solve the mystery, but Mary's presence remains unexplained. To this day, many drivers avoid Archer Avenue at night, fearful of encountering Resurrection Mary. If you ever find yourself near Resurrection Cemetery on Archer Avenue, be cautious. If you see a young woman in a white dress hitchhiking, do not stop because they say Resurrection Mary is still waiting. Located in the northern part of London, Highgate Cemetery is one of the city's most iconic and eerie burial grounds. Its Gothic architecture, massive stone tombs, and unsettling atmosphere make it both fascinating and terrifying. Over the years, many famous figures have been laid to rest here, but this cemetery is not just known for its historical significance, it's infamous for paranormal events and chilling legends. The most famous tale involves the legendary Highgate vampire, a terrifying story that surfaced in the 1970s and caused widespread panic in London. Let me recount the eerie details and the chilling experiences of those who witnessed it firsthand. As soon as you step into Highgate Cemetery, You feel transported to a different time. Surrounded by towering walls, the cemetery is filled with ivy-covered tombstones and large mausoleums that seem to lean against one another. Sunlight barely pierces through the thick canopy of trees, giving the entire place a perpetual twilight. By the 1970s, the cemetery had fallen into disrepair, almost reclaimed by nature, and it was during this time that terrifying rumors began to emerge. It all began on a cold March evening in 1971. A group of amateur paranormal investigators wandering through the cemetery suddenly spotted a tall figure in a black cloak. The figure glided along the main pathway, moving eerily without making a sound. It was far taller than an ordinary human and deeply unsettling. The investigators tried to follow it, but within seconds, the shadowy figure vanished. But this was just the beginning. Soon after, more disturbing incidents were reported. People passing by Highgate Cemetery at night described feeling paralyzed, unable to move as a heavy pressure pressed on their chests. Some even fainted. Within months, stranger reports started pouring in. Several graves were found opened, with the corpses inside mutilated and torn apart. Scorch marks and unexplainable organ remains were found near some of the disturbed graves. Rumors of the Highgate vampire quickly spread throughout London. This creature was said to wander the cemetery at night, attacking unsuspecting victims. People began avoiding the area after sunset, gripped by fear. One night, a young woman passing near the cemetery recounted a horrifying encounter. Everything suddenly went completely silent. No wind, no birds, nothing. Out of nowhere, a massive shadow appeared in front of me. It was so tall that I had to crane my neck to look up. Its eyes glowed, burning red like fire. I couldn't breathe. I felt like something was crushing my chest. I fell to the ground, and when I opened my eyes, the cemetery was empty. But I could still feel the weight on me as fear grew. Highgate Cemetery became a hotspot for paranormal investigators from all over London. Some came armed with wooden stakes, while others carried religious symbols and chanted prayers in search of the Highgate vampire. One investigator claimed he got lost in the cemetery and was constantly followed by a dark shadow that darted between the tombstones. With a trembling voice, he said, "It looked human, but it was definitely not human." It never left me alone as paranormal events escalated. Parts of the cemetery were sealed off, and security was increased in 1974. However, Highgate Cemetery still retains its eerie aura. Even today, some people passing by claim they feel unseen eyes watching them from the shadows. Many paranormal experts believe the Highgate vampire never disappeared. It's simply waiting patiently for its next victim. If you ever find yourself in London, you might be tempted to visit Highgate Cemetery, but be careful not to linger after dark, for they say that when night falls, the Highgate vampire still hunts. Located about 10 miles outside the Kansas capital of Topeka lies the small, forgotten town of Stull. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary peaceful American town with quiet streets and a simple charm. But Stull harbors a dark secret. The town's old cemetery and the ruins of its former church are considered one of the most terrifying paranormal hotspots in the world. Known as one of the gateways to hell, this eerie place has long been associated with restless spirits, demonic entities, and unexplained phenomena. Let me tell you all about its dark secrets and terrifying legends. The origins of Stull Cemetery date back to the 1800s, when it served as a burial ground for local residents. However, it soon became more than just a resting place for the dead. Dog rituals and unexplainable tragedies began to plague the site. At the heart of the cemetery was an old church, now long gone. Its stone walls and collapsed roof gave it a sinister appearance even when it stood. One night, without any clear cause, the entire church mysteriously crumbled. No one could explain how it happened. Locals claimed the church had never been an ordinary place of worship. Strange occurrences began as early as the 1920s. Visitors to the cemetery reported seeing shifting shadows and hearing unexplained voices. Even more disturbingly, some claimed that tombstones had moved from their original places, while open graves appeared without any explanation. One of the most unsettling incidents involved a man who collapsed while wandering through the cemetery. He later described feeling a heavy, invisible hand pulling him downward. Stull Cemetery earned its chilling title as a gateway to hell due to a long-standing legend that beneath the ruins of the church was a passage to the underworld, one of 7 gateways said to exist on Earth. It is believed that during specific times of the year, especially on the spring equinox and Halloween, this gateway opens, allowing demonic entities to cross into our world. Even after the church was demolished, strange cold drafts and eerie whispers have continued to emanate from a specific part of the cemetery. A group of college students who visited the cemetery at night reported seeing a massive shadowy figure gliding between the trees. One member of the group mysteriously disappeared, only to be found unconscious at the far end of the cemetery. When he regained consciousness, he said, "I kept hearing a voice calling my name. I followed it, but then I got lost in a cold, dark void." Another witness recounted how his car suddenly stalled while passing by the cemetery. When he stepped out of the vehicle, he noticed a pair of glowing red eyes among the tombstones. "It was a fear that cut straight to my soul," he said. One local resident, one of the few brave enough to visit the church before it collapsed, shared a spine-chilling experience. As he stood inside the crumbling stone walls, he heard a faint humming sound. "At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then it turned into words. It was like someone whispering in Latin," he said. As he tried to leave, he felt an invisible hand press against his chest, forcing him to the ground. When he managed to escape and looked back, the church had completely vanished. To this day, Stull Cemetery remains a place of dread. Locals avoid going anywhere near it, and paranormal investigators who visit often describe a suffocating fear. If you ever find yourself in Kansas, it's best to stay far away from Stull Cemetery. Some doors, once opened, never close, and they say Stull Cemetery still whispers from the shadows of hell. Located in a secluded wooded area near Midlothian Turnpike in the southern part of Chicago, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is one of the most haunted burial grounds in America. At first glance, it may seem like a simple, forgotten cemetery, but for decades, it has earned a dark reputation due to countless paranormal events and spine-chilling encounters. With decaying headstones, crumbling monuments, and an eerie silence hanging in the air, the atmosphere is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. But what truly makes this place terrifying are the inexplicable events that have left witnesses both baffled and terrified. Let me tell you some of the most terrifying stories from Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery was established in the early 1800s, initially serving as a peaceful resting place for local farmers. However, over time, the community moved away, and the cemetery was left abandoned. Years of neglect led to grave robberies, vandalism, and reports of dark rituals. As the cemetery's reputation worsened, terrifying legends began to emerge. By the 1940s, paranormal activity was being reported frequently. Visitors claimed to see strange orbs of light floating between the trees at night. These lights would vanish the moment anyone approached them. Some witnesses also reported seeing a white figure standing at the cemetery's entrance. However, upon getting closer, the figure would disappear without a trace. One of the scariest incidents involved a group of young people who got lost inside the cemetery. Despite their efforts, they found themselves circling back to the same spot repeatedly, as if something was deliberately confusing them. Perhaps the most famous paranormal figure in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is the White Lady Ghost. She is often seen sitting on an old headstone, dressed in a flowing white dress, as though she's waiting for someone. In the 1970s, a paranormal investigator managed to capture a photograph of this spectral figure. The image clearly shows a transparent woman sitting calmly on a tombstone, making it one of the most iconic ghost photos ever captured. Another frequently reported phenomenon involves a phantom car. Several drivers near the cemetery have described seeing a black 193 era-style car speeding down the road, only to vanish into thin air moments later. One witness said, "The car suddenly appeared in front of me, its headlights blinding me. I slammed on the brakes, but before I knew it,
the car dissolved into nothingness.
Next to the cemetery is a small pond that is also considered haunted. According to legend, a farmer and his horse tragically drowned there many years ago. Visitors who approach the pond have claimed to see the silhouettes of a man and a horse gliding across the water's surface. The figures linger for a moment before being pulled back into the depths and disappearing completely. Two paranormal investigators who visited the cemetery at night described a bone-chilling experience. As they examined the gravestones, a thick fog suddenly surrounded them from within the fog. They began hearing whispers. One of the investigators said, "A woman's voice kept whispering my name, but I couldn't see anything through the fog." When the fog finally cleared, they found themselves standing in front of an old abandoned grave that hadn't been there before. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery remains a hotspot for paranormal enthusiasts and thrill seekers, but many who visit claim that the dark energy of the place follows them long after they leave. If you ever find yourself in southern Chicago, you might be tempted to visit Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, but be warned, those who enter may not leave the same way they came in, and some spirits may still be watching you.